got my degree in business, and then I had done so well. I had wound up much better. I was a C plus student when I was in college in the 80s. I was a B plus student when I was at college in 2000s, and I saw that the school was advertising for MBAs, and I decided that I wanted to try and get an MBA. And so I went to the presentation to recruit students to get into the MBA program. And the presenter started off introducing herself and then explained to us that we had to take the GMAT. And as a dyslexic person, it is standardized tests where you have to just regurgitate rote. We just don't perform very well on it, but if we can get through it all. And so you consider that the test anxiety, testing is where one of my triggers comes from. Excuse me. She had said you had to take the GMAT, and I remember vividly not remembering the rest of the presentation, where we got to the end of the presentation and she's wrapping up and people are leaving and I'm going, what happened? Well, it turns out that when she said GMAT, it triggered me and I dissociated. So I basically just checked out, and it triggered a trauma in my life, and so I didn't remember what was going on. At that point, I decided it probably wasn't a really good idea to pursue a master's degree, and I started a business, another business on my own, with some support from my wife, and that went on for several years, until I one weekend was preparing to meet a new client on Monday, and I had a freakish home accident and broke my neck and crushed my left hand, and my life in a split second changed. So I had to spend it at that point 3 weeks in ICU, and I spent about 9 weeks learning the basics of walking again. And when I got out, it took me about a month, a little over a month, and I got a ride to the client's office and walked in with my walking sticks and signed that new client, and I kept going with my consulting business, which is pretty much what I do. When you meet adversity or you have challenges, you just figure out how to get over them or around them or under them. I kept going with that until just prior to the pandemic, and uh, I'm not going to go sideways into why the pandemic occurred or that it can occur. Other things doesn't really matter. The pandemic basically crushed my little business, and I started to look for work. And it was at that point where I decided I was going to start looking for work and be an employee, and started to look. And at that point, all the people at my skill level and experience level had master's degrees or they had MBAs. And so the MBA reappeared in my life, and I approached my alma mater, so the school I got my undergraduate degree in, and asked them if they could help me figure out how I could take the GMAT, because it's the idea of studying for the GMAT isn't the problem. The idea of taking the GMAT in the rigid environment that they put you in is so wrought with triggers that getting through it is just, it was very intimidating. Um, the school in the midst of the pandemic, there were a lot of universities that dropped the GMAT requirement, so that they could get students coming in because people really weren't interested in pursuing higher education. I When I found that out, I signed up in the program. I spent a year in that in that program, and then one of those adverse events in life happened. The school decided that they wanted to have all students back in person, and I would have to commute at a significant expense. It would have doubled the expense that I would have had to pay for my last year of my MBA program, and the school was not willing to give me any support or any accommodations. So halfway through my MBA program, I had to change schools, lost a tremendous amount of money, These things happen, and we have to make decisions. I could have buckled under. I could have gone and tolerated the commute. I could have pushed myself to go through the physical pain to be there, but it just wasn't reasonable to me. And so changing schools was one of the best things I ever did. I got to focus on different aspects of my MBA program, and um, um, that closely brings us up to date. Um, I've recently graduated with my MBA. It was an amazingly wonderful experience. Um, I'm a firm advocate for those of us who don't do well at standardized tests. I'm a prime example. If I had taken the GMAT to get into an MBA program, the GMAT, if I passed it and gotten a high enough score, it would not have shown that it would be possible for me to get the 3.78 GPA that I completed my MBA program with. It just wouldn't. And it's not because I'm not bright. It's not because I can't learn. It's because that artificial environment would have put me at a disadvantage. And that's, to the detriment of education. Um, that's just part of how education works, is they create an artificial environment where you're expected to figure out when a test example is basically lying to you. And there's only one absolutely correct answer, although there's three answers in your multiple choice that could kind of be true, but there's only one that's the best answer, but somebody arbitrarily says that's the best answer. I'm getting derailed at this point. Um, I think over the years, the thing that I've learned um, the most is that when I'm off balance, uh, that's an indicator that I need to be looking at my environment, and whether that's the friends that I'm hanging out with that are making me feel uncomfortable, or whether that's an employer that's making me feel uncomfortable or not welcome. When people are yelling and trying to get your attention and tell you how unfair things are, they're usually trying to deceive you and make you believe something that you probably should really reevaluate. Um, my my graduate experience got me involved with learning a lot about our inherent biases, and it is fascinating to go back and revisit my life. Um, so as one thing in my childhood, um, I grew up in an environment with a lot of adults that were working at a liberal college. And then when I would leave the campus for school and I'd go out into the town that I was in and the community, it was a very racist environment. And you had to really balance which environment you were in, because if you said the wrong thing in the racist environment, you could wind up in a lot of trouble. And consequently, if you said something wrong in the liberal environment, you might get into trouble, but people more likely would respond with questions as opposed to accusations. Um, don't be afraid to remove yourself from bad situations. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go all the way across country and move to a different state to get away from an environment that you feel is not safe, although that may be the solution for you. Uh, Likewise, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to leave the company that you work for. It might mean you find a different department inside of a company that you work for that is more supportive of your skills. Um, Follow your dreams. Lead with your passion. It just Working with animals was so fascinating to me, and it had been ever since I was a small child in 4-H. Uh, Animals don't lie, and if your dog is upset or your horse is upset, they're very forthright with that. And as humans, even neurotypical people mask, and if they think a neurotypical person might think that because you're behaving differently that you're a little weird, but they may not show that to you. They'll hide that from you. and animals won't do that. If you're displaying some bad behavior, an animal will let you know whether they think you're dangerous or not. And so as humans, we have a much more complicated environment to try and traverse through in life. It's at times really quite challenging and exhausting, uh, which to me is bizarre, because we're supposed to be smarter, and we should be helping each other as opposed to trying to trick each other. Um, but learning about behavior and ethology was the real passion to me, and I was certain that computers were going to be uh, used in that industry for research, and wanted to be part of it. But uh, when I got to the Pacific Northwest, not having a job, running out of money, my trailer and truck being broken down, uh, you have to eat, got to get a roof over your head. So I did what I had to do to get a job. Um, Luckily, I wound up being able to use my degree and stay in technology. Uh, I guess in closing, the again, the things that I've learned is, if people are trying to really uh, create an emotional reaction from me, um, it's usually for some nefarious or ulterior motive on their part, and reacting to them, whether positively or negatively, in support or against them, is really not the smartest thing that I can do. Uh, you may find different things. There are very few things in life that are worth getting hot and heavy and willing to harm other people, either physically or emotionally, over. And it probably is one of my primary drivers why I spend a lot of time away from people. Um, I'm like a lot of people like me. I'm very comfortable in my own head, learning new things, and pursuing my passions. Right now, my objective is to secure work where I can support my family and myself and keep things going. Um, in the world where we're in right now, there's a lot of people trying to distract us to thinking that things are really bad, and they're just trying to distract us. And as best we can, we need to compartmentalize them, I think, and keep their negative emotions in check, um, and not buy into them. Because I don't think things are that bad. We are at an amazing point in time in human evolution, and we should revel in that and try to make the best that we possibly can for as many of us as we possibly can.